Hey, everybody. Today I have for you podcast number 002. Today's podcast is titled, When the Unexpected Happens. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network podcast, where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you deserve. This podcast is for you if you want to live a life with less limitations and more freedom, with a healthier mind, body, and spirit. The Limitless Life Network brand was born out of the scripture in Ephesians 3:20, which reads, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us." I want to help you to recognize and tap into that limitless power that is at work within you. Today's episode is titled, When the Unexpected Happens. And today I have for you 6 points. So these 6 points come from a story that just occurred recently in our lives. This past weekend, we just returned today from vacation, and we took off on Friday. My wife had to run our daughter Grace out to meet with Grandma. Grandma was going to watch Grace while my wife and I got away for our anniversary for a few days. And on her way back from dropping her off, all of a sudden she started to smell oil burning, and her car alarm went off to immediately stop and shut the car off. So she began to obviously panic. And at that moment, I was calling her to see how she was doing in her drive back home. And apparently I called at just the right time. So she ended up pulling off the highway immediately into a gas station. As soon as she pulled over, the car smelled like oil. She opened the hood, and an older gentleman came over to ask her if there was anything he could do, and he was helping her to figure out how to check her oil, and he was just super nice to her and calmed her down. I was talking to her on the phone through the process. She went into the gas station. She looked around, tried to figure out what kind of oil to buy, and I told her what to get. They didn't have it, so she bought the closest thing. She went back out, and she started pouring some oil into her engine. The gentleman showed her where to do that, and another guy who was pumping gas said, "Hey, you should take your car over to that oil change place across the street." And she looked, and sure enough, not too far away is an oil change station. So she gets in the car without adding all of the oil she bought to the car, and just drove it over there. And the guy that worked there got her in right away. And she explained the story that, hey, I'm about to catch a flight in a couple of hours, and I don't have a lot of time to deal with this. So yes, we literally were catching a flight within just a couple hours, and she still had a 45-minute drive back to our house to pick up me, to meet with me and get our bags and go. So, and I don't even know if she had finished packing at that point, but so she was under a time crunch. So the guy pulls it in under the lift. The underside of the car is covered with oil, and this is a pretty unexpected situation. So he realizes that, there's really not a lot of oil in here, and it turned out to be the filter was installed improperly. So he said, "I don't have the kind of oil that your car needs." So, but there's an auto parts store down the street right over there, and she could see it. So she's like, well, how many quarts do I need? And he said, you need 6 quarts. So she, on foot, runs over to the auto parts store, buys 6 quarts of oil, runs back, and hands him the oil. And the guy's like, oh, I took your filter out and your filter is destroyed. So you need a filter and we don't carry this. This is a foreign car. I'll call over and see if they have the filter. He calls, they do have the filter. So she goes to go back over to buy the filter. And this other gentleman that hears about this whole process, he said, hey, I'll go with you. I'll make sure that you get the right one. So he goes with her while he's waiting for his own car to have his oil changed. And he's just looking out for her. And she's like, sure, go with me. And he was probably thinking, if that was my wife, I'd want to make sure that somebody looked out for her too. So she gets the filter, brings it back. The guy installs it. And so she's like, hey, gets her all back up and running. She's super, super thankful. She said, listen, I want to pay you, I want to tip you. And she's like, I just spent all my cash on oil and I spent it on the filter. And she goes, I want to give you something extra. And he's like, listen, don't worry about it. He goes, it'd be more hassle, than trying to figure it out with a credit card or debit card. So, just have a great day. And so he just charged her for the oil change minus the oil, and she got back on the road. So, she called me up immediately and said, she's just so grateful for all the people that God put in her path to help her to solve this major, catastrophe before it was, just going to ruin our vacation. And I thought, wow, I'm really, really I'm super proud of the way you handled that whole situation, because, anybody could have freaked out and done any number of different things, but you took advantage of every opportunity that was put in your path. And I think this is worth sharing and breaking down. So I've got 6 points for you out of this story. And point number 1 is phone a friend. And in this case, I was phoning her, but it doesn't matter. The point is that don't wait to reach out to somebody who actually cares about you and to help you through any type of challenging situation that you might have. It really helps to talk you through that type of thing. And oftentimes, it's just to calm you down and talk you off the ledge a little bit, There are obviously somebody else that's not in the situation with you is probably going to be thinking about it more in a logical and rational way versus somebody that's in the mix of the throes of a situation like that. You tend to be in your emotional brain instead of your logical brain. So it certainly will only help you to speak to somebody that is calming and is rational and can be a little more logical about it to help you through the process. Because ultimately, once you get calmed down, you have to come up with some type of plan. And I think of MacGyver. MacGyver was the logical guy, right? He was the guy that no matter what the crisis was, MacGyver would look around and just say, I can fix this situation, because he'd come up with a plan. He'd start thinking. And that brings me to point number 2, and that is use all the resources at your disposal. And, MacGyver, what did he do? He'd take a battery, a paper clip, a cigarette lighter, and who knows what else. He'd find some duct tape and he could fix anything, and his Swiss Army knife, and he'd always solve a problem, right? So, and that's what my wife did. She used what was at her disposal. She used the oil at the gas station. She used the knowledge of the man pumping his gas, and all you're trying to do there is figure out how to go from A to B, right? Because if you can go from A to B, then you can go from B to C. Like everything that you start to apply to your situation leads you to the next opportunity. And that's really kind of what you're trying to do here, is to just continue to keep solving forward, right? And so point number 3 is create meaningful relationships quickly. And that's really an attribute of that my wife Sandy has, is that she's very quick to make relationships with the right people. So, in this case, a couple of them sought her out, but she was not going to refuse their help either, right? So look for people who are sympathetic to your situation that want to help you, and also, start to look for the more qualified people. So the elderly gentleman that wanted to help her out, he wasn't necessarily qualified to offer a lot of help, but he was certainly there to support her through the process and do anything that he could, because he knew her situation wasn't really great. And so he, then the guy pumping gas, go over to the oil change station, and there's somebody that's more qualified, right? So she immediately quickly moves from A to B and B to C, which is now she's with the right, and she's in the right place for the right situation. And that just so happened to work out really good for her there. So that's a really good thing to know. And then reward for their generosity. So I know she's planning on buying that guy and everybody at the oil change place pizza this week. That was on her list of things to do, I know for sure. And that brings us to point number 4, and this is kudos to her, and that is point number 4 is do the work. Do the work. What does that mean? Do the work. That means that you actually got to take the action. That means that you literally have to, get on your horse and run down to the store to get the oil. Then you got to run back. I'm seeing her like all ready to get on an airplane, and she's, all showered and all dressed and ready to travel, within a couple hours. Now she's got to run home, take another quick shower, get cleaned up, change her clothes, and get on the plane. But she's like not thinking about that. She's thinking about getting the work done, because small wins lead to the big wins. So, take decisive action, and that's going to lead you to opportunities. That brings us to point number 5, which is keep your eye on the prize. Stay focused on the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And this is something that people really can struggle with, is that you can get distracted along the way by any number of things. You can, maybe you buy the oil, or you go to buy the oil and it's not the right oil, and you're like, oh, we're never going to make the flight. Geez, they don't have the right oil. I don't know what to do now. I might as well just call AAA. And by the time AAA gets there and they start to go through this whole process and fill out the paperwork and do the claim and all that stuff, you're going to miss the flight. We're not going to be on vacation. So the eye on the prize was that she's saying to herself, I'm going to make my vacation. I am not going to miss my vacation because of this situation. So yeah, you might have some setbacks along the way, but those setbacks are opportunities to learn. And if you do have a setback, really, you look at every setback like the original problem. Go back to steps 1 through 4. Apply steps 1 through 4 when you have a setback. It's the same formula, right? And this brings me to one of my favorite sayings of all time, and that is, nothing can stop a made-up mind. When you have your mind set on something, it's really hard to stop you. You have this infinite power that's at work within you, that if you just harness that power, you can get just about anything done. And I believe that with all my heart, for sure. And that brings us to the most important point out of all of these, and that's point number 6. Point number 6 is look for all the blessings along the way. And, that was one of the first things she said to me when we talked on the phone after she was driving the last 45 minutes, was that she was just so grateful for all these people that came to her aid in this situation. I wouldn't say rescue, because I don't think she was needing to be rescued as much as she was taking control of the situation and using the opportunities along the way. But she was just so grateful for the gentleman that stopped, the other guy that gave her advice, grateful that there was a gas station there when she pulled off, grateful there was an oil change station across the street, grateful there was an auto parts store, grateful that the auto parts store had everything she needed, and grateful that the guy that knew how to fix everything fixed it and fixed it right. So she could have easily been so mad at the other place that did her oil change a few days later. She could have been blaming them. And while getting all upset and blaming somebody else, meanwhile, nothing is being done. Nothing is being solved. You're wallowing in the whole problem. And you're not, and all you're really doing in those situations is you're sabotaging your opportunity for success. That's all you're doing in that. You're wasting your energy and you're wasting your time. And in this situation, time is of the essence, right? And in your life, it's the same way. We all have a limited amount of time to do the work that we're trying to do in life. And why waste it wallowing in misery? Why waste it wallowing in guilt and shame and blame and anger and just being upset? that it just doesn't work. It just doesn't get you where you want to be. So focus on all the things that you just have to be grateful for. Be grateful before you go to bed every night. Be grateful when you wake up in the morning. Be grateful in the good times. Be grateful in the bad times. And I think you're going to find out that things are going to work out a lot better for you. So those are our 6 points for this week's podcast. And I got to say, it was great. So that's all we have for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Tune in each and every week to stay connected, inspired, and moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations.